If you think saving money will make you rich, you've been lied to. In fact, doing this one thing your whole life could be the exact reason you stay broke. Today, I'm going to show you the difference between saving and investing and why one builds wealth and the other slowly destroys it. We're all taught the same thing growing up, essentially. Save your money, put it in the bank, don't touch it, be responsible. And don't get me wrong, saving money is important. It's crucial, even. But I think where people go wrong is that they make that their entire financial strategy. And that's going to hurt you so much long term because you're about halfway there. Because the system that we're operating in has changed primarily due to inflation and how we lose purchasing power vastly over time. And most people don't even realize that. All right, let's break down the definitions of saving versus investing just to make sure we're talking about the same things here and keep it nice and simple and clean. Saving money is exactly what it sounds like, not to overcomplicate it. It's money most likely sitting in a bank account. I hope it's safe, it's liquid. You don't need to wait 3 weeks or a month, or you don't have to sell anything to essentially move it around or to utilize it to deploy the funds. And it grows at a very, very slow rate in a traditional bank account. And even you'll see here comparatively in a high interest savings account later. Investing is your money working for you as a tool inside of an asset, like an index fund, not to beat that to death, right? But index fund is a great example. It's diversified, it compounds over time. Saving essentially protects your money, and investing grows it over time. And if your money isn't growing constantly, it's actually losing value and purchasing power. Let's get into inflation itself. So, inflation, you can think about it as kind of the hidden killer, if you will. This is constantly and forever reducing your money's value, your purchasing power. And where you really get hit by inflation is when you save money, when you let cash sit in a bank account, typically. Don't get me wrong, saving is essential in the sense that we need a certain amount of liquid funds, right? We need to cover, and that's going to vary for different people. I recommend starting to build a 3-month emergency fund, which I've talked about in my other videos. Start there. Make sure that you have essentially 3 months of your fixed expenses. Know what your build out a monthly budget sheet. Know what your food cost, your electrics, utilities, rent, or a mortgage, etc. Start with a 3-month emergency fund. Build that out to a 6-month emergency fund, and even as you kind of develop and progress, if you want a little bit more for certain business opportunities or just to make you feel comfortable, peace of mind, you could even build it out to a year. But essentially, 6 months is the general accepted minimum. And I would say have that in place, obviously, before you invest. Understand the monthly budget sheet before you invest. But if that's all you do, and a lot of people are great savers, and all they need to do is flip the switch and understand this and start deploying their funds towards investments, it would be the difference between millions of dollars and then your purchasing power rather eroding if you're just a great saver. So that's what most people don't understand. Even if your bank account stays the same every year, right? Say you have 10,000 in the bank, 20,000, 30,000, doesn't matter. Whatever the number is, right? That's becoming less and less valuable each year. You can buy less and less with it. Inflation is typically between 2 to 3% in the US outside of extenuating circumstances. Sometimes it's higher. As of this video in February of 2026, in the US, it's currently 2.4. And then if you just look back at the last 10 years, 2.7 was the annual inflation rate in 2025, 2.9 in 2024, 3.4 in 2023, 6.5 in 2022. So that's a tough year, obviously. And then 7% in 2021, so on and so forth, right? You can look that up. All that data is available online from tons of published, credible sources. That's just to give you an example of how much money you're essentially losing, or not money rather, but purchasing power you're losing over time. And that's going to impact you significantly, not over maybe 5 years or even 10, although you'll feel the pain there, but over 15 years, over 20 years, over 25 years. People are living longer and longer, and this is something everybody needs to know about and actively understand. Your bank interest, so the rate that your the money that you've put in your bank account is going to grow is typically 0.01% all the way up to 1%. Certain high interest savings accounts, you can get it up to 4. Still, when you take the cut of inflation, 2%, 3% out of that, it's almost nothing, right? It's not protecting outside of the emergency fund and the cash you have saved up to make sure that you feel peace of mind. That's not doing anything for you. Okay, so far we've talked about inflation, how it works, how it's cutting into your purchasing power every day. And if you just save, you only have half the equation. It's going to destroy you if all you're doing is you can't save your way to retirement, period. It doesn't matter if you earn $100,000 a year. You're not going to be able to save your way to retirement because you're eating into your purchasing inflation rather is eating into your purchasing power, and the money's being able to, as you move forward in life, purchase less and less, and that's going to get dramatic the further out we look. So if all you're doing is saving versus saving and investing together in conjunction, you're actually going backwards. It's not going to happen. Here's a perfect real world inflation example. I tried to find something that everybody would be semi-familiar with. So let's look at Coca-Cola in the 1950s. How much do you think a Coke, for example, costs in 1950? Spoiler alert, it was 5 cents for a 6.5 ounce standard glass Coca-Cola bottle, right? That's insane if you exist in 2026 and you understand, today you might pay $2 for a 20 ounce, you might pay $3, $4 at a restaurant, or even more in some places, right? It depends. If you're at certain resorts or places where they upcharge things, it's going to be even more. The point is, it's grown exponentially if you look at percentages, a percentage increase of Coca-Cola from now to then, and tons of other goods, services, assets, they share that trend. You'll see that. So just imagine what a Coke is going to cost 50 years from now. And that's if things go well and the Federal Reserve is able to maintain an average of between 2 to 3% inflation year over year. So that's going to continue to happen. You're going to continue to lose purchasing power due to inflation, and that's not a winning strategy. Savings is one half of that, right? You can't get rich saving. You can't retire comfortably saving. Saving money without investing is like running on a treadmill. You're definitely moving, but you're not going to get anywhere. All right, quick shameless plug for the channel before we get into the investing advantage and the whole other half of this concept. Welcome back to the channel. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. I really genuinely appreciate the support. And if you're new, thanks so much for stopping by to learn something of value. If you could do me a huge favor and like the video, subscribe for more interesting content, I'd really appreciate it. We're going to continue to cover must-know topics around personal finance, investing, and wealth creation. Okay, so now let's jump into the exciting stuff, the other half of the coin, if you will. We're going to talk about the investing advantage. Let's talk about opportunity. So historically, the S&P 500 returns 8 to 10% annually. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. The general trend is always upwards, and that's a great average. You get to take advantage of the compounding effect, the snowball effect, which I've talked about in my other videos, how your money invested in a good S&P 500 index fund, something low cost. There's tons of resources online, and I talk about this generally in my other videos. That's going to be how you not only preserve your wealth and don't get destroyed by inflation in the future, it's also the only way you're going to get around this, by investing in the market that historically trends upwards, and then also having, a small portion of that, 3, 6 month, etc., even more depending on the person, emergency fund in savings. So if you invest consistently over time, your money doesn't just grow, right? It's going to multiply, it's going to compound. You don't get rich from what you save, and you never will. You become rich and wealthy and more comfortable by what you invest. So this ties back to my previous video where we covered dollar cost averaging and how that is a must-know method or process for investing. You don't time the market. You're not looking for an entry point. It's a consistent investment, say $100, $300, whatever it might be, on a consistent basis that you plug into something long-term like that index fund. That's going to be powerful because it's going to combine consistency with growth. Now let's do a quick comparison, a side-by-side, if you will, scenario for two people, right? Person A is a saver. That's all they do. They save $500 a month. They keep it in their bank account. They're making almost no growth on the small, less than 1% interest rate. or even a high interest savings account, right? You're getting destroyed by inflation. That's person A, saves 500 a month, keeps it in the bank, not a lot of growth. Person B has their emergency savings fund there, but they're an investor. They take that same 500 a month that person A is continually saving and they invest it into their index fund. They're going to get an 8% return on average over time. After 30 years, the saver is left with $180,000, which is, again, losing value due to inflation, and the investor has 700,000 plus in their account. So that's the same discipline, same money, completely different outcome. The difference isn't effort, it's strategy. So now that we've covered the side-by-side scenario and the dramatic results and differences that two people who are deploying the same amount of money, $500 a month, that they would get at the end of that time period, right? What the $500 turned into for the saver versus the investor, and the massive life-altering results, if you will. Let's talk about the behaviors that keep people stuck in those same saving patterns, being stuck essentially in with half or less than half of the equation, thinking you could save your way to retirement. I think it's typically fear of investing, right? It's a scary concept. I'm not familiar with it. It's just for rich people. Whatever the stigma is or the issue, that fear of investing is not a good enough reason to not get involved and take care of your financial future, take calculated risks and do your research, because there's no other way for the average person outside of someone with a pension who works for the government to really retire. You have to take your retirement into your own hands. No one else is going to do it for you. Secondly, it's a lack of knowledge. And again, I think this is becoming less and less of an excuse given YouTube, the internet, all the thousands of resources and guides and how to and people who work in the industry of advising and investing to go to at this point. Another big reason is thinking it's risky, right? There are obviously calculated risks with anything, and investing in your future in the stock market is no different. But we're not talking about, picking random meme stocks and dumping money on it and hoping to get rich. This is a proven 150% long-term strategy that people have used for years to make this happen. So what is risky to me is just saving and thinking that's going to be enough. That's risky. Not doing anything is risky. Not understanding your monthly budget sheet and your expenses and your income and how to grow that's risky, right? That's way, way scarier to me, knowing that no one's coming to save me and I'm not going to be able to retire comfortably. I'm going to have to work forever. That's much scarier and more risky to me than not getting involved in investing and learning about this and educating yourself, or even seeking help with this earlier. That's the real risk outcome in my perspective. And then wanting perfect timing, lastly. So we talked about dollar cost averaging in the last video. That's going to 100% mitigate the perfect timing thing, so no issues there. What's actually dangerous is doing nothing. That's the biggest risk, sitting on the sidelines your entire life. As we bring this to a close, I want to make sure we're especially clear, even though I've talked through it repeatedly, just to make sure we understand kind of order of operations here. Saving is still extremely important, but it's just step one. You need an emergency fund. You need short-term cash. You need to make sure you understand your monthly expenses, your income, the monthly budget sheet, right? But past that, saving isn't going to do anything for you. It is going to continue to deplete what you could put into investing. It's going to lose purchasing power. It's going to lose value through that inflation process. It's only going to get worse, and costs continue to rise, groceries, everything else, right? Everything's essentially getting more expensive as your money loses value in your bank account. So it is important, but it's just step one. So make sure that you move towards a long-term wealth building action plan. You have start with the emergency fund. Make sure you have everything covered. You understand how that works. Then start investing consistently, something you can afford to contribute on a weekly or monthly basis, something that you can automate even better. That's perfect. Then you deploy that money into a low-cost index fund, as we've beat to death, and then you just stay consistent long-term. That's it. It's not complicated. That's how you build $1 million portfolio. At the end of the day, the difference between saving and investing is the difference between surviving and building wealth. One is going to keep you safe, the other is going to set you free. If you want to get ahead financially, I would start by learning these 3 things next. That would be index funds, compound interest and how it works, and consistent investing. I've made several videos that cover all of those topics and more. Just remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. Thanks, guys. Good luck.